So I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's edition of Beer and UX. This is something we host monthly at Neuron. Neuron is a user experience and product design agency located right at 650 California here. We work for a variety of clients, both big and small, and Michelle is one of our senior UX designers on our team. Something that's been interesting, Michelle, recently is Microaggressions, and she has taken it upon herself to give an excellent presentation tonight where you will all leave experts like Michelle on Microaggressions. So without further ado, I'll let her take it from here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. All right. Tonight, I am going to be talking about micro-interactions. Thank you, Chris, for the intro. As he said, I am a senior UX designer at Neuron. My background is originally in industrial design, and I learned user experience design from an expert in the field. And my first job was at Neuron, and I'm still here almost 3 years later, so they treat me very well. All right, let's get into it. So, this guy, his name is Dan Saffer. He literally wrote the book on microinteractions. Louder? Louder. Okay, I can be louder, for sure. If you don't recognize him, he now works at Twitter. I believe when he wrote this book, he was working at Smart Design. Very, very talented guy in the field, and he has written 4 books in the realm of interaction design and UX design. I highly recommend all of them. He is very, very good at humanizing very technical things. So if you want to read something that still feels like a story, but you're gaining a lot of knowledge, I recommend reading anything by him. The beginning of this talk is going to be a little bit like our book report because he's really the only person writing about this. Everything you can read or listen to on a podcast is sort of reiterating his knowledge. So this is the guy. If you want to know about it, that's your guy. He defines a microinteraction as a contained product moment that revolves around a single use case. So in essence, a tiny piece of functionality that really only does one thing. And I'm going to kind of be unpacking that so it's A, easier to understand because that's kind of super vague, and B, giving you some sort of step-by-step tools so that you can actually design them in a way that makes sense to both you, the client, the developers, and really gives you the tools you need to prove that it's worthwhile and isn't as much work as it may seem. Basically, a micro-interaction is taking a small moment that would normally be sort of dull and lifeless, and it's giving it a little bit of delay. So you're taking something that a user is doing, typically clicking a button, changing a setting, and making it a little bit enjoyable or fun. And oftentimes these micro-interactions, you don't even notice them until they go away. If you didn't see the heart sort of palpitate and turn red when you liked something on Instagram, you'd be like clicking it 50 times. But before, I don't know, 10 years ago, we never really got that feedback. So I'm going to sort of unpack that for you. I'm going to start with some examples of where microinteractions are really good to be used. The first is going to be to accomplish a single task. So something we see pretty frequently now and is a really good way to put your brand into an app is pull to refresh. This is like a fun Airbnb dribble shot version of it. Or uploading an item to an app, a website, what have you. You can sort of add a little bit of personality into that without even trying and really indicate to your user what's going on so they're never confused or left in the dark. The next is connecting devices together. The first example is Spotify, actually. If you launch their program on more than one device using the same account, they don't let you do that. So something that they do is sort of remind you gently without saying, you can't use this on more than one device. They'll just say, oh, you're actually listening on your MacBook, so you can either do that or listen on the phone, but you can't do both. But they're sort of emulating their brand tone. They're not giving you shit for it. They're just telling you, you can't do that in the nicest way possible. The next one is actually Google's way of connecting to a Qi charger. So they're not only doing this tiny little micro interaction where it just pops up showing you that you're connected, the charger's plugged in, it's also giving you this super quick indication of how high your battery is. And the last one I really, really like. So Nest is doing something really cool with their product where they're using the brand across all devices, essentially. So anywhere that you view anything from Nest, it's really going to give you the same tone and feel, which is surprisingly hard. So basically, if you want to adjust the heating or cooling on a Nest device, you're turning this actual physical product one way or the other. You're doing that exact same motion in the app. You're literally using your finger to turn the temperature up and down in a location that you're maybe not even in. So it's a recognized behavior at that point, and you're getting that brand across all devices and just really knocking it out of the park with recognition. The next one is interacting with a single piece of data. So this can be as simple as turning an air conditioner on or off and then seeing the temperature of it, or pushing record or pushing stop in your camera app, which you probably do every day. The next is controlling an ongoing process. This is one that I really like and I'm getting a little more interested in, and I'm going to try to put this into some upcoming work that I'm doing right now. And this is something that is not typically triggered by the user, it's actually triggered by the system. So if I'm doing something silly, like talking into my microphone every morning on our call without it being unmuted, it's going to remind me gently that I'm actually speaking into a microphone and no one can hear me. Another way of doing that that's really worthwhile, that I believe Instagram is just rolling out, is this interesting thing they're doing here where they're using AI to sort of learn the language of bullying, and they are stopping people in their tracks and doing something that we normally don't do. They're adding friction to the process of posting a comment. So instead of this instantaneous, amazing comment where that person probably saw it instantaneously, they're slowing down the process and forcing the user to actually think about it, and then giving them the opportunity to learn about why they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, which is kind of a cool take on controlling an ongoing process, in my opinion. The next one is adjusting a setting. I like to use physical products sometimes in these examples, because I think that it's an easier way to talk to clients. Giving them something that they actually use every day, like the on switch on their iPhone, can help people understand. And I included this image because I think that the volume indicator on the iPhone is one of the most annoying micro interactions on earth. It pops up on top of content that you're currently viewing. Like, we're normally adjusting the volume on our phones when we're viewing something where we want the volume to be on or off. So a product that actually does a really good job of fixing this problem is Instagram. If you're viewing something in their app, which is very content-based, it actually pulls this bar way up there, and you can still see what you're looking at while deciding, like, you don't want the cat video to play in class while your teacher is staring at you. The next, there we go. The next one is viewing or creating a small piece of content. So, for example, entering a password. Sometimes we have to take the route where someone puts the whole password in and hits continue, and then we tell them that it's not strong enough or it needs to be 6 characters. At times there's just no way around it, but this is a really good example of a simple interaction where you can indicate as they're going so they don't have to guess and check. The next one is one that I think we kind of take for granted. When you're really anticipating something and you're staring at a screen and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, getting a little hint, like there's a person or a bot or whatever responding to you, can really make the person on the other side feel better. If I want to know where my package is and I know that you're about to tell me it's either lost or found, I'm going to feel a little bit better knowing that someone's actually responding to me in that moment. All right, and then we have turning a feature or function on or off. So turning a setting on or off, I want to receive notifications or I don't. Or in this example, turning the water on and off, something we do every day at WeWork. Everything's automatic here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the structure of microinteractions. This is going to help you design them better. So there's essentially 4 parts. And the first of those is the trigger. The next is rules, and then feedback, and then sometimes, but not all the time, we have these loops and modes. And let me unpack those for you a little bit. So the first is a trigger. So I'm going to use this example from this Common Foods website. Someone designed this really awesome little interaction that they actually don't use, probably because it was going to cost too much to implement. But the trigger in this case is the add to cart button. So if you watch what happens when they click add to cart, it's triggering something. So the rules are what determines what actually happens when they click that trigger. So in this case, what happens when they click the trigger is this cute little box of ramen gets really teeny tiny and goes flying to the corner of the screen. And what's actually happening after that is the feedback. And the feedback is arguably what most people think a microinteraction is without realizing that there's multiple parts to it. I think a lot of the time before I read this book and did a bunch of research, when I thought of microinteraction, I was like, oh, okay, a button gets darker when you hover over it, or like something gets bigger, or what have you. But if you're designing them, you really need to start from the trigger and work your way through these items, and you'll realize that maybe not so many things in your product need to be microinteractions, or maybe more of them do to give more context. And lastly, loops and modes. So loops and modes was arguably weirdly hard for me to understand. I think it was the words used, but I couldn't really grasp what the heck a loop and a mode were and what the difference was. Dan Saber defines them as the meta rules of the microinteraction, and that actually makes sense to me now. So the loop is essentially how frequently it's looping, it's occurring. So an easy way to sort of think about that is if you are designing an app and you want someone to do something more, or a website, for example. So let's say we really want these people to add this to their freaking cart. We can make the add to cart button just like pulsate or wiggle up and down or do light up or do whatever. We might not want that to be happening like a blinking crazy light. We might want that loop to occur twice and then stop for 5 minutes and then twice again. And the mode is kind of a fun thing. So as you can see, they have this subscribe and save 11%. So if I'm adding this to my cart, a mode that I could add to this microinteraction is once I've added it, the button that says add to cart could update to say add another. Or if I'm a user who's coming back, I have a subscription, or maybe I don't have a subscription and I've logged in, it might say buy it again. I think eBay does that. But very useful way to sort of like let the user know that you see them and you're sort of following their journey. All right, so there's 3 ways to incorporate microinteractions. The first is case by case. And case by case is where, probably the most common, I would argue, where you sort of design something and then you look through it and you decide where the individual cases where you could really use a microinteraction are. So a button or a menu turning into an X or what have you. The next is the MVP style, which is when you sort of take an existing product and drill it down to the most minute version of it that it could be. For example, a recording app where, maybe you wanted this app to be, you record something and then you can upload it to the drive and you can do all this crazy stuff, and you sort of drill it down to one micro interaction. So you click record, and when you click stop, it just saves it to your camera roll. That's the product. And the third is complex. And this is where you sort of treat every single feature as a complex, maze of micro interactions. This one is super intense. It's sort of like a Facebook style way of designing where you have a huge team and a lot of people who are very willing to design all these little interactions for you. So we're going to unpack case by case a little bit because there's something kind of cool that can come out of them, and case by case interactions can lead to these things called signature moments. And signature moments are essentially super brandable moments. So Facebook is a perfect example of this with their like. They were one of the first people to do the liking thing, and the thumbs up really stuck for them. And now it's actually become a huge part of their brand, which is why we call it a signature moment. So it's one of their signatures. Recently, I've seen them actually use all of their little gestural fun animations as marketing material, which is cool. And the guy who designs these is on Dribbble and is actually pretty active. You could probably message him and ask him for advice. He seems really cool. So we have recently designed an app that sort of curtails on this signature moments style when it comes to micro interactions, and that is this app called In the Know. This is an app for Chinese speakers who are trying to get a little bit more familiar with the English language through slang and other words that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. So you can scan an item, and the app will give you some words to help you learn what the heck you're looking at, and allow you to ask questions to other people who speak the language that you speak and might want to help you understand the world around you and teach you the language more easily. And we added these little characters in here. I don't know why they won't do their thing. There we go. So this little thinking guy happens when you've taken a photo of something and he's literally processing it. He's pulling words from within the app to give you a hint. And these cool little carrots to the side, that's an example of a super easy thing that you can add just to sort of draw the eye and get people to touch something. We also use this little character when you do something awesome in the app that deserves praise. He gives you a little happy, smiley, good feeling, excitement moment. So something that I kept seeing when I was doing research on the topic was a lot of people wondering, working at agencies where they felt kind of stifled by deadlines and they felt like there was no way that they could incorporate micro interactions. And I think that you can harp on the fact that they're worthwhile 1,000 times, or you can just design them in without anyone even knowing. When you're designing your symbols, you can, when you design a button, design an inactive button and design a hover state and design the whatever you want, anything you want. If you want to design that button to load as something is uploading, do it. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get used, but it's there for the using. So I would say use what you already have. That would be my argument. So an example of us using what we already had on a product that was huge, where we couldn't add a ton of little things because the development time was already huge, is Projects for Good. So an example of a really simple micro interaction is a hover state. So when you hover over this, it gets a little bigger and a drop shadow is added. Really simple. I'm going to show you guys some other fun examples of stuff we've been working on as well in the micro interaction space a little bit. One thing we did in the past is Vital. This is an exercise application, and this is like a really quick clip because it's from a video, but as you can see, when you search, as you're typing, the items in the search results that have videos that relate to what you're typing will have little yellow dots. And as you type, the yellow dots will go away. So you don't need to bother moving over to workouts, channels, or contributors if there's nothing there that has results. It's just a subtle indicator that you don't even need to go over there. We don't have what you need. And lastly, I'm going to end with a product that we worked on that's kind of fun. It's called, for a company called Tacit. And this is actually viewed in a tiny little thing that sits on the side of a hard hat or a pair of safety glasses. And you're looking at it at the corner of your eye. So all of the buttons on this screen are meant to be used by someone in the engineering or construction manufacturing field who is wearing something that is preventing them from holding a tablet or what have you, like giant gloves. And all of the buttons you actually have to say out loud. Very interesting project for us to work on. So, this little thing at the top, add media, is the person talking. So all of these actions are performed by speaking, and we had to add a lot of these little indications of what the heck is going on. Like right now we have the little red dot to show you're recording, not watching something. When you stop recording, we're showing we have it saved because maybe you lose connection or what have you, and then we add it to your asset media. So all of these things had to be super obvious, but we did them in really simple ways. 3, 2, 1, and now it's recording. The little fade on the screen is gone. You know what's going on. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys. I'm gonna open it up to questions, but first, I want to say, if you're new here, which I think a lot of you are, maybe you've joined the meetup group, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't, please join us. We post updates pretty regularly. We love all of you, and we're almost at 1,000 users in our group, members, users, and we're excited about it, so we want more. Okay, Chris?
Yes,
You wanna MC?
I'll be walking around if anyone has a question. I can bring it back to you.